globalization is impacting the lives of many.
The number one reason for the rising share of global flows is, of course, the reality that Asia is going to power the world's GDP growth.
We wonder about the extraordinary economic success of Asian economies today. We have to look at this incredibly long history.
Globalization, to a certain extent, has really damaged poor economies and those that we call left behind.
Globalization is the process of international, interregional, and intercultural contacts arising from the interchange of products, people, ideas, and worldviews. This has led to economic development, cultural diversity, and political progress all over the world. The colonization of the Western countries in Asia-Pacific and South Asia is seen as one of the earliest forms of globalization. How globalization impacted these regions is explained through the externalist view. According to Kimura, this view illustrated Asia as a region that is impacted by globalization. He elucidates how the world powers, particularly the United States and Europe, are responsible for globalizing and transforming the Asia-Pacific and South Asia. This has brought positive and negative effects to the region.
Their arrival in South Asia and Asia Pacific was powering their way through the politics and economy of the Asian countries through their so-called Western superiority. And this means they give environmental, social, political, ecological, and cultural advantages. The Westerners involved themselves with the local politics and indigenous polities. Colonial rule of a nation varied either direct colonial rule through colonial administrators or indirect rule where native administrators are used by the externalists. This can be either forced or accepted by the locals, and externalists claim that they have brought new economic practices, religion, culture values, political structures that were able to change the colonized nation. For example, in the Philippines, where Spaniards wanted the natives to be civilized and used sultans as puppets or inferior chains of commands. Scholars of nationalism claim that the heart of one's national identity lies when Western industrialization rises. An example is Jose Rizal when he realized that he was truly Filipino when Spaniards colonized and tormented the Philippines. Another claim would be that the World War II was influenced and integrated by external forces, and so, with the economic meltdown of post-war, the Asian countries were able to increase in economic growth and the export-oriented growth policies. Through international financial institutions and international money funds that were to help rebuild Europe, but then it was then used to help economic downfall. These were the core claims of the externalist view.
The externalist view could be seen in the Great Depression, which was a worldwide economic catastrophe that began in 1929 and lasted until about 1939. During this time, all Asian countries were affected by the steep fall of agrarian prices that began in 1930 and reached its lowest point around 1933. Despite having an upward trend in the ensuing years, in general, prices were at an all-time low until they rose again during World War II. Wheat and cotton, which were widely traded in the world market, led the downward trend, and not long after, products such as millets, which were grown for local consumption, followed the trend. Normally, prices reflect supply and demand, yet there were no major changes in Asia, but the prices were halved nevertheless. The cause of such a downfall was due to the decline of credit. It capsized forward trading, which served the purpose of stabilizing prices. Panic sales proliferated, disrupting rural marketing, and this took years for Asian countries to recover. There were many more underlying effects of the Great Depression in Asia, such as the rubber trees from Southeast Asia and West Africa that helped build the growing auto industries of Europe and North America, being cut short as during this time, people couldn't afford cars. British and French colonies in Southeast Asia suffered from this as nobody wanted or could buy their rubber. The Great Depression also led to Japan ruling the state with militant authoritarianism and fascism. Japan pulled themselves out of economic stagnation through military production, to seize new land and resources. This definitely sparked the Second World War, in which not only Asia was affected, but the whole world too.
A major historical event that can relate to this view is the Meiji Restoration that happened in Japan in the 19th century. The Meiji Restoration, or referred to at the time the Meiji Revolution, happened in 1868 and brought about an end to the military government known as the Tokugawa Shogunate. The Meiji Restoration is identified as the era of major political, economical, and social change in Japan that brought the modernization and westernization of the country. The Meiji Restoration was brought about Japan's borders being forced to open by the black ship of Commodore Matthew Perry in the late 19th century, which was closed off due to the Tokugawa Shogunate. During this period, industrialization became a focus for the government, which directed the development of strategic industries, transportation, and communication. Private firms were offered government financial support and aided by the institution of the European-style banking system in 1882. Those efforts at modernization required Western science and technology, and under the banner of civilization and enlightenment, Western culture, from the current intellectual trends to clothing and architecture, was widely promoted. Wholesale westernization was somewhat checked in the 1880s. However, when a renewed appreciation of traditional Japanese values emerged, such was the case in the development of modern educational system that, though influenced by Western theory and practice, stressed the traditional values of samurai, loyalty, and social harmony. By the early 20th century, the goals of the Meiji Restoration had been largely accomplished. Japan was well on its way to becoming a modern, industrialized country.
Living in an age where globalization is dominant, different cultures and religions are mixed, seen almost everywhere. Languages open and separate borders between countries. The English language serves as a connector between these borders, a universal language. English right now is the most dominant language used around the world. It was believed to originate from the West, specifically from European languages. According to Steve Ember, the English language is a result of the invasions of the islands of Britain over the many hundreds of years. These invaders lived along the northern coast of Europe. But what is English to the world? English has been such a big influence to the world. It has become the international language used for communication, business, and connection. Around 20% of the world's population speak English. That would be around 1.5 billion people.